Last year in 2024, I started reselling with my wife on eBay. In that span of 6 months, we grossed $13,000. This video is going to talk about what the breakdown was, and more importantly, what are some mistakes that I made throughout that process. For those who don't know me, my name is Art, and this channel is focusing on reselling online via eBay and potentially in the future other platforms. But as I mentioned at the start, my wife and I, in probably about June, started reselling on eBay in 2024. And in that span, um, we'll call it a roller coaster. Roller coaster is fun, and we were enjoying the ride. However, when you step back and look at the data, it really tells a different story. And for me, it shared with me how many missteps I took. Now, throughout that process, I already knew that I was making some errors. For example, buying buying items at the thrift store that perhaps looked good. However, after investigating, when you brought it home, you found that there were holes or it was missing buttons, something along that. That's just an example of things that can happen when you're starting to resell. And of course, it's trial and error. You can watch YouTube, you can get a lot of resources, but still, once you get your feet wet, you learn that there's a lot that goes into it. And so, the way I started the video again was talking about we grossed $13,000 in 6 months. But after fees, we only netted about 7,500. Now, we have to account for the cost of inventory. Now, to begin, we started selling just items in the home, so we won't account for that. But to help the math just kind of flow, we're going to just not even factor it entirely. And we're just going to focus on the fact that we spent about $2,000 throughout 6 months on buying inventory. And when we remove that inventory, we end up with 5,500 that we profited. Now, that is such a miscued number because of the fact that we're not accounting for our mileage as far as like driving. We're not accounting for our time that it takes um, cleaning, washing, and of course packaging. So we were to factor all that in. Of course, that 5,500 would drop even more. But these are expenses that going into it we already planned, and so these will be things that when we do our taxes, we'll make sure that we account for. Now, even though it may not seem appealing to have done that and over the course of 6 months, ultimately make just about a little over $800 a month in additional income, the reason why it doesn't discourage me is because, again, this was our first year selling. And what I learned was how to make sure that we're giving eBay our money for helping us sell our items, but we're not giving them a lot of our money. In fact, when we look at the data, it shows here that within the first 4 months of us selling, eBay was netting about 50% of everything that we made ourselves, which 50% is a vast number. Now, when we compare it to the last 2 months of the year, which I like to think is when we caught momentum, when I started understanding how to utilize different resources, watching YouTubers. Shout out to Rockstar Flipper. Please follow him if you don't already. He is wonderful, and Justin Resells is also a great YouTuber. I think it's very warranted. I'll put their channels in the description. But anyway, um, after kind of diving deep, recalibrating, relisting, doing a whole bunch of things that throughout, the segment of my channel, I'll be sure to make sure that I explain how I did all these things. We'll focus on the last 2 months of the year, which is November and December, which I guess we'll call it seasonally, historically, maybe they're higher months in retail in general. But riding that momentum and reapproaching, eBay only netted about 33% of our sales now, which is a huge deal. But here's the part that gets me a little bit more excited. Um, Unfortunately, it sounds funny to say this, I had to take a week off, right? Me and my wife and I and some friends took a vacation that we always take during the holidays. And so I was gone for a week. And so I did something that everyone should not be doing, and that's putting our store away. However, there was no way I was going to be able to fulfill those orders. And it was the week before going into Christmas week. So what I would imagine is that would have been a high dollar week for me. But oh well, I'm going to try to figure out how I can not mess up next time around. And so if you think about it, not only did setting our store away hurt us in momentum for our store, hurt us in making sales, but it also kind of brought everything flat. And so the goal when we got back was not so much turning on the store, but figuring out how we could reignite it and throw some gasoline on that and get it going. And so now that we're into the new year, I feel really good about how that's been going. And again, more videos in the future to talk about that. Um, but that's just a very broad recap of how 2024 and our first 6 months of selling went. And the last 2 months have been very promising, and riding that momentum into 2025 has been great. We've already started making a good amount of sales going into the new year, and we hope to be able to continue. And I hope that you follow this journey with my wife and I. We'll be posting content when we're at stores, dollar items that we find, and that what we flip it into, and then of course giving recaps of what this process has been like. So I hope you subscribe, I hope you follow our journey, and if you made it if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I wholeheartedly appreciate it. Y'all take care.